So, Mike, you got Joe Biden that's heading over to Southern California, your neck of the woods right now. Um, it was
No
interesting
wonder
when he
it's
was
raining.
it's raining when he was leaving the White House. You got a reporter ask him, said, "Hey, so are we going to be seeing a switch between you and Gavin Newsom, and having Gavin Newsom run for president?" And obviously, the president really didn't answer that question. But not just in that conversation, but the other thing that has been interesting has been this movement or these articles I continue to see about Michelle Obama running, replacing Joe Biden, and it seems odd that her name would be coming up.
Uh, well, she's obviously very popular within Democrat circles, and so I'm not surprised. What's surprising to me is that I don't. What are they supposed to be? Penn and Teller, the two of them. They do a magic trick and they switch each other out. I don't know. I think people might know. I think the white hair might give it away. I just find it bizarre that. I mean, there's so many things bizarre about the election right now, but it really truly is within his own party that there is all of this speculation about is he going to stay? Is he going to go through? Certainly, that report that was done by special counsel on his hiding of top secret
Classified
documents,
documents. Yeah.
in his garage, did not do him any good. And you can tell it didn't do him any good, and it hit it. You can tell it hit a nerve because there was an immediate reaction, coordinated, that came out of the White House and included all of the surrogate world around Joe Biden. That once you hear them do something like that, you know somebody hit a chord.
Oh,
If you're watching TV, you know somebody hit a chord.
except for Kamala Harris, because she got asked about it. She goes, "I'm ready to serve. Should I be called upon?" Apparently, she was not in that conference in that meeting because her comment was, "I'm ready to serve. Should I be called upon?"
Well,
And
she's
I know
I
she's obviously she's ready for it, or she's ready, licking her chops on that one. But yeah, she did not get the memo because everyone else came out. It's like I was watching some of the Sunday shows and comments being made by people within his administration, and everyone's saying he's got such a command of the issues. He's rigorous. He is, the most difficult thing about sitting with him is being prepared, because he is amazingly prepared and ready for all these topics and issues, and he asks tough questions. And so I'm like, man, there's like, okay, here are the things you got to go out there and say. And there was
yes.
no. I would be great if there was a lie detector test there
Well,
for people.
yeah, it's there was a lot of Pinocchios going on. The noses were growing in front of your face.
Well,
Look,
that's a tough. That was going back to the case. That's a tough one. I mean, because here you have the special prosecutor or that said, "Look, we can't bring charges against him because he doesn't have the mental capacity by which to even be able to answer the questions." And part of it, they mentioned that he didn't know whether he was still vice president or when he had left the White House. He didn't know about how his son died
when his son
or when
passed
his
away,
son
yeah.
died. There was a lot, we're not making fun of Joe Biden on this thing. It's as we've said before, father time hits everyone a little bit different. But at the same time, it really does show you, and you see it all the time. I mean, now with social media, there's clips, you get to see a lot more of it. Just the declining mental capacity that this individual has, and they are, as of today, they're still running him for president.
Right. Well, basically, he's not being indicted, not because he didn't do something wrong. The special prosecutor said he did something wrong, but he's not indicting him because he feels that people would feel sorry for him and that there was a mental competence issue. Now, um, and for that, the special prosecutor gets vehemently attacked by Biden's people. And I'm sitting there kind of saying, well, wait a minute, he just gave your guy a free pass. he wouldn't have done that, and they certainly didn't do that to Donald Trump. But your guy's getting a free pass because of these things, and you're vehemently attacking him. So I guess the alternative is you would prefer to have him stand trial. That would have been That would have been an interesting way to approach it. But it does show. The other thing is just the cognitive thing. When you're sitting for a deposition or something, there's a lot of pressure on you, and so even people that have a clear head most of the time will get a little flummoxed and stressed and confused. It was to hear it come from a third party, a neutral party, someone in the legal profession. That's where I think it was devastating. It didn't come from a Republican congressman. It didn't come from Mike Johnson. It didn't come from Matt Gaetz. It didn't come from Donald Trump. It came from a neutral party that is in the legal profession. And I think that's why it had such a visceral reaction within the White House and within the Biden circles. And that's why you still have these discussions of whether or not he's actually going to be the nominee, and questions like that, that reporter asked. And I think you will continue to have that over the course of the next few months.
Well, Joe Rogan,
Because
Joe Rogan was just talking about it on his podcast, where he's like, "Look, I'm convinced that they're going to replace him. They're going to replace Biden with Newsom." And I think there's a lot of folks out there. Obviously, no one's talking about Kamala replacing him, but there's a lot of talk out there about
other
him
than
getting
Kamala,
replaced. I know. Well, who do you replace Kamala with?
oh, I don't know. Go to Disneyland, pick a character,
Yeah.
or better yet, go to South Park, pick a character,
A 4-year-old, yes.
or even better. I mean, and I got to tell you, because this happened this week, the person that is entering into the political world stage, I don't even know her name, but it's the wife of that Russian opposition leader
Oh, yeah,
to
yeah.
Putin, who went up to the prison in the Arctic. I think it's called Clinton Prison or something, and accidentally died. Is that how it goes? That was a joke, but this person who has not really been on center stage showed an amazing command, on the World Economic Forum that she was at when she found out her wife, her husband had died. I'd vote for her if we were switching Kamala out at this point. I'd actually vote for her to put in to replace Biden. But and the funny part is, to get to your question. So if you do replace Newsom with Biden, or if they do replace Newsom with Biden, do they replace Kamala? I mean, who moves the first woman, black, Asian vice president? How do you move that person out the door?
Right. I don't think you can. I don't think within that party you can.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a tough road to get through. And despite and you see more and more clips of her and her interviews, that it's like, okay, what happened? I mean, did somebody put something in the water? And it just doesn't make sense sometimes, the things that she says, or it's so funny to watch.
Or is it, or Mike, is it a let's get him through the general election and then step down? Then
Well, that's what she's hoping for. I mean, clearly that's what she's hoping for. And I think what you'll see is, as President Trump's campaign starts to focus, there'll be a whole lot more focus on her in 2024 than there was in 2020. I mean, I think strategically they should have focused more on her in 2020 than they did, because she had this record in the state of California that would have turned a lot of people off in places like Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. But I mean, you go into Michigan and you start talking about, and you go right into the heart of a Democrat area like Detroit, and you start talking about how she was the attorney general in California that put the most black men behind bars. I mean, you know, they let her get away in 2020. She's going to be, you know, there's the platform and Joe's on the platform, and then there's like one step down for number two. You know, she's trying to move it up a little bit, and
Yeah.
so I think she's going to be a focal point for 2024 because I don't think anyone believes that, you know, the president is going to, if he gets reelected, would last 4 more years.
Yeah. Well, it's a interesting topic, and I'm sure there'll be as we get closer to these primaries, and as we get closer to the general election, there'll be a lot more attention being paid on his health, and we'll see. If he, I mean, I think they've already indicated he won't. If it's Trump, that he will not do any debates. I don't think it's Nikki Haley or anyone else. They would never do any debates because I don't know how we last there an hour and a half.
No, I don't think they would do the debate because I think they'd probably get into a fight. You know, someone take off their shoe and hit the other one. Based on the sneakers I've seen, I think
Yeah.
I'd put money on that. I know I'd put money on that one. But yeah, I don't know how you don't debate. I mean, it's almost an admission of you're not strong enough to withstand that, and I think that becomes another thing that people will see. Again, it's not Republicans that are saying it; it's the perception that you're giving to the public,
All right.
and that's when it becomes. People expect Republicans to talk about Joe Biden's age, okay? They expect that. They expect to talk about, you know, the moments, the senior moments that he has. My advice to Republicans is don't talk about that. Talk to people about your gas price, your meat price, your chicken price, your electric price, all of the stuff that impacts your life every day. People can see that and they have empathy towards someone that is going through that. Let others do that talking. Let a special counsel say, I'm not going to prosecute this guy, even though there's evidence there that he should be prosecuted because of his age and because of his mental capacity. That has way more effect on the issue than any Republican saying anything.
That's sound advice, and and the thing is, and I'll leave it on this one is that the day after what when special prosecutor came out and said, well, we're not going to file charges on him because of his in his mental capacity. um, he went out there and held kind of a little presser there. The next day he was up in the podium, but even then he confused. I was it the person from Ireland over with the Mexican president, and I mean he was just confusing people there.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that was just like, let me prove to you that I do have the mental capacity. And so it was not a good showing.
No, it was not, and people see it. Republicans don't need to go making that an issue, and Republicans need to focus on, you know, making people understand what happens if Kamala Harris does become president, and why they need to make a change after 4 years, because it's going to be better for them, their pocketbook, for their jobs, for their families, for their safety. I think that's what they have to focus on.
You know,
Let
Mike.
others take care of that other stuff.
Mike. I want to expand this conversation a little bit. We are getting closer to the March primary, and I've been speaking to a couple different candidates running for office. I've been speaking, grabbing lunch with a couple of different consultants, and some of them kind of voicing some of their frustration with some of their clients. And you mentioned something about areas that people should be focused on. Showing your contrast. Telling people it's like really going out there and telling people, look, this is why I'm running, and this is why that person doesn't work, or why that person should be replaced. After 4 years or after 2 years in some of these cases. Well, one of the comments that I've been getting from some of these candidates is like, look, I have a brand. I'm a bipartisan person. I get along well with everyone, and I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be. I don't want to contrast. I don't want to say anything bad about the other person. And so it's been getting some of my friends who are consultants a bit frustrated because they're like, look, we're running in a partisan primary. We're not running for dog catcher. We're not running for mosquito Bateman board where really no one cares about your politics.
Right.
You're running for a state office or you're running for federal office where there's a party label by you, and there are going to be Republicans that come out. There are going to be Democrats that come out, and especially in the primary, where you've got some of the hardcore, and Brady agrees, that's going to be coming out. Right? What's your take on some of this stuff?
Um, I don't know what's Brady's take on some of this stuff. Um, I think people need, to, especially if you're running against an incumbent, you got to give people a reason to vote that incumbent out. They cast that person, their vote for that person once, and so you have to make them understand that there's a better choice, or that maybe they made a mistake. Just saying I'm a better person doesn't work. You have to show the failings. In the case of Biden, I mean, look, the record, you could say all of the numbers you want to say. Every day when people reach into their pocket to do something, they're hurting a little bit more than they were 4 years ago, especially before the pandemic, but even with the pandemic. And so that's something that needs to be a constant drumbeat, because a basic thing here is voters are selfish. I mean, voters vote for the thing that's going to be best for them and their family. And there's nothing wrong with that. So you have to make the case as a candidate, especially if you're running against an incumbent, that what you bring to the table and what you believe in and your capabilities are going to be the things that's going to be best for those people for their own self-interest. Not, not under the table stuff or stuff like that, but for your own best interest. And I think if you're able to do that, then you can break through. And it's especially important. And there's nothing that says, that, by the way, I mean, it's funny you say that, because here in Pasadena, we've got a city council race in the area that I live in. And I got a mailer from one of the Democrats attacking and it's a nonpartisan race. But, you get a mailer from one of the candidates who is endorsed by the Democrat Party, endorsed by, Planned Parenthood, endorsed by the unions and everything else. And he's attacking the councilman because of his position on abortion. And it's like, wait a minute. I mean, that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I mean,
Or in a city council
in a city
race.
council, yeah, in a
Yeah.
city council race. But what that shows is, if you want to be naive enough to think that the other side isn't going to do anything and everything they need to do to beat you down and defeat you, then you shouldn't be running in politics, because this is a war, and they will do anything. The important thing is you just need to understand it's not what you think is important, it's what the voter thinks is important. You talk to the voter and what they think is important and what you can do to make that better, then you can have a dialogue with someone. If you don't
Well,
do that, you're not going to be successful.
it's and I in my conversations, I've explained to them, I'm like, this is a choice between two individuals, or when you're in a primary, this may be a choice between three or four different individuals. But yes, you've got to lay your case out as to why you're qualified to be in that office, what your ideas are about, and how that's going to make people's lives a little bit better. But at the same time, there's got to be a point in time, especially if you're just the two of you, you've got to contrast. Especially if that person happens to be an incumbent, which in a lot of these situations that person is an incumbent. And you said it a lot more eloquently than I did. I'm like, look, every good story has a villain. Was my
Hmm.
take on it. And you've got to show, and you've got to go out there, and whether you believe or you think in your head that you are this great bipartisan individual, and everything's going to be kumbaya, and that people are tired of negative ads. I mean, if people were tired of negative ads, and if they didn't work, people wouldn't, no one would be using them.
Right.
But they do work, and they also are utilized in order to cast an individual in a certain light, or to highlight certain things that they do, or votes. I've been seeing the ads for Adam Schiff, and it's talking about, oh, I'm here to fight for homelessness, I'm here to fight against crime. I'm like, looking at him like, this is one of the guy who's made the situation worse,
Hmm.
in California, when he was, in office. And it's one of these things where whoever becomes his opponent, has got to go out there and highlight and say, he talks about homelessness, he talks about crime, but yet you've got these individuals that end up voting for zero bail. You got these individuals that end up voting for Proposition 47 that has made our situation worse here in California. And then every single thing that they go out there and vote for or support regarding homelessness that has made the situation worse. And it continues to increase. But therein lies the contrast. And it's not that you've got to go out there and call someone, some derogatory name, but you do have to contrast because you are really looking um, to show why that person shouldn't be in office.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You need to show the contrast. Negative campaigns work. You don't have to be mean spirited or name calling, although it's much more accepted now than it ever was. Um, but you have to give reason, especially if you're running against an incumbent, reason for people to vote the other way. Probably a good way to look at it is once you're elected, be as bipartisan as you can be to get something done. That's your job. Your job is to get elected. It's a two-step process. You can't govern unless you get elected. So, that's part of the equation here is you need to show that contrast and that difference. And especially in a jungle primary like we have here in California where, you have Democrats and Republicans all running together. In the Senate primary here, you've got Adam Schiff, talking more about Steve Garvey than he talks about Adam Schiff in many cases. Forget Katie Porter, forget Barbara Lee. He's Adam Schiff spending money to talk about Steve Garvey. Why? Because Adam Schiff wants to face Steve Garvey in November. He doesn't want to face Katie Porter. I understand that. That's a good strategy. So that's just playing smart in the political game.
Well, talking about the political game, I saw this article this weekend about protesters, and it's one of the secretaries, and his name is just skipping me right now. But they were in Washington D.C., and you had these protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters,
Mm-hmm.
that were camped outside his house,
Mm-hmm.
and that they've been camped out there outside his house, and every time his kids were being dropped off, and they're like yelling and throwing blood on themselves and throwing blood on the ground, and it gets me where we can have differences of opinion on issues. We can have differences of opinions on a candidate or what a candidate stands for or doesn't stand for. But I mean, at what point did families become part of the problem? Part of the political become okay? And I don't think they should be. I don't. I think, look, if you want to go hold a press conference in front of someone's home, hold the press conference, but then leave. Be done. Go.
Yeah.
Leave the guy or gal alone, and especially leave their family alone. And because in this article, it was like they were yelling at the kid saying your dad's a baby killer, your dad's a child killer, and we're talking about like a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old here.
Right. They actually that's been an organized effort in D.C. and they've been doing that to actually all of the Biden cabinet appointees.
Yeah.
I know a couple of them that someone said to me that they had to have Secret Service protection at their house, and I was like, why? And they were explaining it to me. I was like, that's just crazy. I mean, you can disagree with someone's policy, but it's another thing to draw the line where you make it personal. And it also, by the way, just as an aside to the people that do it, it doesn't help your cause. I mean, if you're a moron that links arms on the 110 freeway in Southern California because you wanted to support Palestinians, you're not winning anybody's sympathy by doing that. In fact, you're pissing people off, and even people that may agree with your position, you're pissing them off. There's ways to do things, and there are lines, there are boundaries. To your point, and going after family is, I just find it fascinating that they do stuff like that, and they are. I mean, and it's fascinating that they're doing it to a Democrat administration. I
Well,
mean,
and
I would
and,
expect that, on the other side.
and my message on leaving family alone. I mean, that carries whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether
Right.
you're upset at your Republican organization and you're upset, that a Democrat did a certain way, just leave the families alone. I mean, even here in Sacramento, there's a city councilwoman who, her house is um, backs up into a park, and the protesters at 10 or 11 o'clock at night were out there protesting in the park, but they were protesting her, keeping
Hmm.
all the neighbors up at nighttime, and it's like, it's uncalled for. It's,
Yeah.
there's, I mean, you're just making your situation. You're right. You're making your situation worse, and I mean, you're pissing off people like myself or other people who may not have some stake in the game, but it's just absurd.
Right. It what they're trying to do is get attention to themselves, not attention to their issue.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to get attention to the issue and convince people that they should support your issue, probably a good way of doing it is not to piss off the people, and that's what they do. So I just I find and it's and I just also it's the causes that they do that just leaves you shaking your head, and it's just there's ways to do it. There's proper ways to do it. I just you keep doing stuff like that. I remember a couple of times, being in a situation where people were trying to make a point. And they get on the highway and they lock arms and stuff like that, and it's you see people having to restrain themselves from running them over. Um, it's just it doesn't help. It doesn't help your cause. It
Yeah.
really doesn't help your cause. That's the bottom line.